MovieWeb.com.
So yeah, no, really enjoyed the film. It's such an interesting movie. I mean, obviously an interesting book and topic. I wanted to begin by asking you if you could talk a little bit about how you got involved in the project in the first place and what you actually thought of the Stevens book.
Yeah, well, I loved the book when it first came out, and it was one of those books that like people talk about and everybody was reading. It had this little zeitgeist moment. I remember in New York, everybody I knew was picking up and buying it, so I was like, I got to be a part of this conversation because I feel left out.
Right.
And then it was January of 2006. Chad Troutwine, who's the producer of the film, called me, said, I really want to meet with you. I've got this project I'd like to talk to you about. And he was in the process of optioning the book, and he said, would you like to be involved? And I was like, absolutely. And so now, here we are 4 years later, it became real.
How did you choose, or was it chosen for you, the segment, the topic that you would
we all got to choose our own sections. And for me, I just had a son, had a little boy, about a year and a half before we shot this. And this whole idea of what do you name your kid, was really important to me. It was really something my wife and I talked about over and over again, and it was kind of fresh in my mind. And so I was like, yeah, I believe names make a difference. I believe names are important. I want to tell that story.
And when doing it, I mean, what did you learn that you maybe didn't already know? I mean, I didn't know that there were actually people who were baby namers, that was a profession. Was that new to you?
Well, for me, the fact that there's people out there who help people name their kids is unbelievable. It's just that is someone's job is remarkable.
How much do they make? Did you find that out?
She wouldn't tell us, but
right.
it's almost like they come on as consultants, so it's almost like they're paid a fee. I don't think it's like a full salary, but there's a consulting fee that they get to help you find names, which just goes to show you if you have somebody who will pay for something, then you can always have a job.
Was there anything that you learned that sort of changed your opinion about sort of the social economics of it, or?
Well, I think for me, what really hit home is the fact that we are still a very judgmental society in a lot of ways. That people are, and myself included, and you do make assumptions, based on simply a name, hearing from someone. You think you get an email from someone blind, and you'll judge first based on what their name is, and then also how well do they write an email. That's the other one. So
right.
How eloquent are they? Can they actually compose a sentence? But I grew up in West Virginia, and that if somebody called you or left a message and they have two names, like if Bobby Joe called you, you're automatically going to assume this guy's maybe not too quick.
Right.
This guy's probably a little country. This guy might be a redneck. There's and literally that's an assumption that people make. And just being from West Virginia, I had it happen to me just because of where I was from before people met me. So I think. There's interesting things in the film that I think what really comes out is there is still very much this racial, this undercurrent of racism in our country.
Yeah. I loved the story of Temptress.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that was something that you discovered. How did you find out about that?
That was a story that was one of the stories that Levitt and Dubner wrote about in the book.
Okay.
About this girl, and it's such a great story that I said we have to put that in the film. Yeah. And we tried to, and we shot it like a lot of the film we shot. Almost like a feature, like a lot of it we shot with recreations, with people who, because we didn't have the real Temptress in there.
Right.
The real Temptress is now grown up, but we had young Temptress and the person who was portraying her mom, and I think it worked out great. Yeah, it made it feel very real.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, I was pretty sure that it was probably actors, but I wasn't quite. You do get right into it, and I also loved the different spellings of unique.
Yeah.
And all the different uniques and
amazing.
All of that. Yeah, no, amazing. And so talking to the experts that you talked to, were those the experts that they used in the books?
Roland Fryer was in the book, and he's the one who did the huge study in California, which was decades long, of kind of understanding the social aspect of names and how that kind of affected their lives later on. And then the other guy, Dr. Sindil Mulanathan, he's also at Harvard. But he did a very, very different study where his was based on resumes, solely based on someone's name. So, will Bob Jones have the same type of career opportunities as Tyrone Washington if they have the exact same resumes? And so he sent them out, and what the results that he got back were really fascinating. That Bob Jones, even if he has a much worse resume, will get more callbacks than Tyrone Washington.
Just based on that name.
Simply based on that name. That more people, that this guy, because he sounds white,
Right.
You know, his resume said he was less educated. He did not have like all of the same things as Tyrone did. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of frightening.
Yeah, it's got to be startling, right?
Yeah, that it's 2010 and that's still the world we live in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really shocking. I also wanted to ask you about Winner and Loser Lane.
Yeah.
Because that is just, first of all, I mean, is that dad just cruel?
Well, it just goes to show you there's parents who just shouldn't be allowed to. Yeah, or at least maybe there's parents who shouldn't be allowed to name their kids. Like, remember there was the guy who, it was like last year or year before, who wanted to name his kid Adolf Hitler.
Right.
There was the guy in like North Carolina who he was in like the Aryan movement or whatever, and I want to name my kid Adolf Hitler Smith or whatever the kid's last name was. And the hospital and the judge that did him was like, no, you can't. But yet we still allow somebody to name their kid like Winner or Loser or Apple. Like,
and that was completely true that the winner ended up a life of crime and Loser ended up being a scholar.
Yeah, graduating at the top of his class, joining the police force, oddly enough, with his brother being a career criminal, and becoming a detective, a very decorated, officer on the force. It's amazing.
Do you think that has something to do with like, since he was given this name in life, like he worked even harder?
I think so.
And then the other guy just sort of, since he had that name, he's
a winner.
Right?
Easy. Yeah, it's like I don't have to work for it. I do. I think there is some sort of kind of psychological frame that you have in your brain if you have to work harder.
Yeah, that sort of attaches to that name when you're born.
That's why my son's name is actually You're Going Nowhere Spurlock.
Oh, no way! But what do you think really the film tells you about naming children? I mean, the importance of it is, I mean, is it important? Is it not important? Is it frivolous? Is it?
No, I think it does matter, and I think that if you give your child a difficult name, or if you name your kid something that they're going to have to work against, you are already giving them some sort of a black mark. Does that mean that it will be a black mark forever? No, but it is something that societal, the societal norms that we have will dictate it will be harder at times for that person just because of X.
Yeah, and it's really interesting the social aspect of it as well. That
like I remember Alex and I when we were naming Lakin, like we literally were throwing out every possible name that we could have, and literally we're trying to make fun of every name that we could come up with. Like, what would kids say? Like,
right.
What would kids say? So it's like whether it was a boy's name or a girl's name, like we would literally try and rip apart how would little kids make fun of that name.
And the double-edged sword is that you can't change your last name. You're stuck with that.
Yeah, so with my last name, the kid is he's stuck with that forever.
Yeah. Well, that's not so bad. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about when you're making a film like this, as a great documentary director yourself, how do you sort of put your spin? I mean, since it's sort of an anthology piece and it's going to kind of fit in with other films, how do you sort of, does that matter, and how do you put your own spin to make a Morgan Spurlock?
Yeah, I think that tonally, all the stuff that I always do, me and my writing partner, my producer partner, Jeremy, we always want to just make sure that while it's dealing with a serious issue, there is an air of levity to it. Right. That it's still going to be fun. That we're going to give you the medicine, but it's going to taste like cotton candy. It's going to be great, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to be crying but laughing at the same time. So I think for me, so long as it continues to have some sort of humorous elements, and something that kind of makes you laugh along with us on this journey, then I think that's the key.
And is it sort of your narration and kind of that's sort of your signature mark that you put on it that people fans of Super Size Me will recognize as sort of a part?
I think we always try and I always write everything through my voice, through a first person voice of here's how I'm going to tell you the story, as if you and I are just having a conversation. And I think that kind of conversational dialogue helps. Because it makes it accessible. It makes it feel like you and I are just talking. Yeah. It
makes it easier for the audience to really take in that information and compute it. Yeah.
And
then, in addition to yourself, some other great documentary directors in this, Alex Gibney,
Eugene Jarecki, Heidi Ewing, Rachel Grady.
Did you know that they were all involved with it when you got involved,
literally when when Chad Trowley and I sat down, he had some ideas we wanted to talk to. Like I was the first person that I was the first director that he spoke to, and I said, I love it, I'm in. And then he and I kind of talked about other filmmakers that he's like, who do you think we should talk to? And literally we sat down and we made a list of everybody. I was like, here's the filmmakers that I love. And there were people that were on that list that I know he went to that just didn't have time. Also like Errol Morris, who would have been amazing. Right. I think he went to Werner Herzog, but Herzog was in the middle of doing another film. But Gibney's brilliant. Gibney is amazing. Heidi and Rachel Jesus Camp, one of the best movies ever. To this day, like when people say what movie should I watch, I tell them King of Kong is at the top of the list because that movie is so fantastic bananas. And like you watch that movie and you're like, Billy Mitchell's real. That's a real guy. It's awesome. I love that movie. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Cool.
And then at the end of the day, have you seen the full finished?
I saw it. I saw it
Okay.
at Tribeca when it premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. And my favorite piece in the whole film is Eugene Jarecki's piece, which is about how abortion lowered crime rates. The way he dealt with it, it's like he really pushed himself in such a different direction because he deals with very heady subjects all the time. But the way that he dealt with it, because his whole piece is animated, it's narrated by Melvin Van Peebles. It's just smart and it's good and engaging and cool looking. It's like he really did a great job of making, again, a really difficult subject very accessible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just curious, in your own opinion, the whole piece as a document, as a documentary, how do you feel like it came together with all the different pieces and the interlocking piece with the Stevens?
Yeah, well, that's it. All that stuff in the middle was all shot by Seth Gordon, and so I think once the films were done, the other 4 films, I think Seth did such a good job of kind of weaving them together through those conversations, those dialogues, those stories that he shot with them, and it came out fantastic. I think as an ensemble piece, it's one of the not to be biased, but it is I feel like it's a really one of the best executed ensemble films that I've seen.
Yeah, it's really great. And how do you think it does justice to the book?
I mean, I thought it did justice to the book. It's a better question for Levitt and Dubner, but
but as far as bringing all the information to an audience, in a visual way,
I think that if you've never read the book, people are really going to enjoy it. And I think if you read the book, you're going to get a lot out. You're going to see things in the film that weren't in the book that you liked. You're going to see them come to life in a way that you didn't anticipate. And I think that, but the hard part of ever making a book into a movie is you can't put it all in there.
Right.
Like there's so many stories, so much information that you just can't do it all. So I think there'll always be people who say, it's not as good as the book. And I said, well, of course, because it's a book. That's what makes books great. Yeah. But for the other millions of people who actually don't, go out and read, it's a great movie.
Total BS, wasn't it?